but I want to make sure I get this in, just a brief few words on, it's kind of shiny here because I bought, like I said, I always try to get hardcovers for my Star Wars EU books, but I've yet to be able to find hardcovers of the Star Wars X-Wing books. I know there are probably some library-bound copies out there, but I haven't been able to find them. So I try to just order, and I want to get the old paperbacks before Disney's reissued it with the Legends banner. I know Disney, for the Star Wars X-Wing books, they've actually got some kind of cool art on some of them, and their reissues as Legends banners. But for my collection, I like to keep it pre-Disney. So I just have this original one, but some of them come in such poor shape that I put the laminate covers, these like self-adhesive laminate sheets, I put that over my paperbacks that I have to get, which are kind of in bad shape. Because a paperback, it's so easy just for that spine to get all kinds of bent to crap. And, suddenly it's falling apart and it's just very loose and whatever. And I find that if I put these laminate self-adhesive sheets on it, it just strengthens it up a lot. As much as it can be for a paperback anyway. I think you can take your paperbacks to certain binderies and whatnot and have them sort of library bind it, in a hardcover for you. I think I've got, okay, I'll use this one as an example. This is a paperback, Star Wars Galaxy of Fear. These were like the R.L. Stine books in the Star Wars universe, kind of, that kind of thing. And this is a decent paperback, but I'm always looking for hardcovers. So I picked up a library bound, which is what the library did, was they either bound it themselves or took it to a place to bind it. But you can see they took the paperback cover and just either laminated it onto a hardcover or somehow, they did do this with the library, and you can see the little card thing in there for back in the day. And now it's a nice hardcover, and they redo the stitching and the binding, so they make it a hardcover. So you go from this, paperback, which is going to get bent up and the spine's going to get all kinds of creased, to a nice hardcover, library bound, which is great. So that's just a little lesson in collecting antique books. But I've yet to be able to find library bounds for my Star Wings X-Wing books, and most of them were only released in paperback back in the day. I did a video on books 1 through 4 of the X-Wing books, and like I said, I liked a lot of things in them, but I didn't like a lot of things. Corran Horn was so annoying. Really don't care about his character at all, and those books just shove him down your throat as the coolest guy ever, This Aaron Alliston takes over from Michael Stackpole in this. This is a good point. Usher Barbarella's talking about I'm partial to my books matching too. That's true. So if you wanted just like the books matching on the shelf that maybe you're not going to read regularly, maybe you've already read them, if you just had the nice Disney's Legends books, they're all going to be the same height, they're all going to be the same color and their coordination and stuff. So I can see somebody, picking out for that. But this Wedge Antilles, who's a great character, from the original trilogy, he's a great character. And these X-Wing books take place, I think, right after. Is it after Truce of Akura, obviously? But I think can't remember if the courtship of Princess Leia has happened yet. But basically, Warlord Jinja is still out there. The first books are them going after Izan Ishard. This is when the New Republic is first back on Coruscant, and everything's fine there. And this is long before the Thrawn trilogy happens, long before Dark Empire, long before any of that. And it's interesting stories that need to be told. They need to be chronicled. The idea of, okay, well, how did the New Republic retake Coruscant? How did the New Republic go out there and fight some of the little Empire remnants? And Isan Isard first was the one, and then Warlord Jinja. You hear about him a lot in later books and whatnot. So these are the stories that really talk about their fight against him. And the first 4 books was Wedge Antilles putting together a new Rogue Squadron, right? Because Rogue Squadron they were the ones that handled everything, in the Star Wars movies, the flagship, squadron of the Rebel Alliance, and then the New Republic and so forth. So Wedge Antilles had to put together a new squadron. Luke had retired by then and whatnot. So it's Wedge putting together a new group. There are some great characters in those first 4 books. Corran Horn annoys me, but there are some great characters in there. Book 4, the Rogue Squadron is fully in place. Izan Ishard is dealt with. She's no longer the villain at this point. And Wedge decides that, okay, well, when he put together the new Rogue Squadron, he wanted X-Wing pilots who could also do sort of ground incursions, could also be useful, planet side. And this time he wanted to put together a squadron that were sort of commandos on the ground first and foremost. They had talents and abilities to, infiltrate and whatnot. And primary, and then secondary, they were also X-Wing pilots. So he puts together the Wraith Squadron. Really cool idea. The difference between Wraith Squadron and the Rogue Squadron, I think, is a little strained, but you just kind of go with it and whatever, because some of the characters could have been in either squadron. It's like it's not much of a difference there, but the idea is a cool one, and the characters that make up the Wraith Squadron are pretty cool, pretty decent. I saw an issue here and there with some of the character developments. Kel Tainer is a really cool character. I think something that he deals with in the end could have been a little more well developed and given us some more of a breadcrumb throughout it and whatnot. But I just really see some great characters, great moments. The whole story overall, it's such a step up from the other X-Wing books. So if you're going through the X-Wing books like myself, or maybe you did back in the day in the first 4, you don't hate them. You're like, okay, well, I want to know what happens. I want this part of the story, but it was kind of a slog. Like I had to reread them a couple of times because I just got so bored the first time through. Wraith Squadron picks it up big time. I hope that the rest of the books stay up at this level at least, because Wraith Squadron really did hold my interest. It was like, oh, okay, well, this is cool. This is fun, So Wraith Squadron by Aaron Elston, and this is the first one. I'm guessing this is book 5 in the X-Wing Chronicles, and they go on to, was it like 10 or 12 or something, I think, eventually in the end. There's a big chunk of them in the EU universe, which are right one after the other in terms of the chronology of the EU universe. But then eventually they do start to skip, and, 1 or 2 come a little later in the chronology and timeline and whatnot. But I really enjoyed Wraith Squadron. I know a lot of you guys did too, because when I was talking about how it wasn't as crazy as I wanted to be about the first 4 books, you guys were saying that, Wraith Squadron was good. So, I am in agreement with those who like that. As I was cutting this video out of the live stream, I realized that I really did give Wraith Squadron a short shrift. So I wanted to come back in and just give a few brief more thoughts in the disgusting, sweaty summer sun. Go away, summer. Ready for fall. Anyway, I just finished reading the book that day. I was also at the end of the stream. So I just wanted to say a few more words about the characters, one, because there really are some awesome characters in this book. The Rogue Squadron books, the first part of the X-Wing books, they had some cool characters. They had the annoying Corran Horn, which is just crazy annoying, but they had some interesting characters. But Wraith Squadron feels more like an A-team. It's like a band of misfits, which I really appreciate, because you've got, Kel Tainer, the almost 7-foot, good-looking pretty boy. He's got all these issues and darkness in his past. But then you've got a Gamorrean is actually a member of the squadron. They call him Piggy, as a harken back to Porkins, who died in the first movie. But he was experimented on by a scientist who quelled all of the rage hormones, because normally Gamorreans aren't really good for much more than just sort of guard dogs, in Jabba's palace or something. But he quelled all the rage. He's able to follow orders. He's actually one of my favorite characters. He's the most logical of them all. He put a translator, the evil scientist put a translator in his throat, so you hear the squeaking Gamorrean speak, but then you hear the electronic, translation, if he's talking to you. So I love that. There's also a character who serves as their doctor. He's one of the pilots. He's one of the squad, but he serves as their doctor, who's basically a cyborg. He's addicted, or he's allergic rather, to Bacta, which is the miracle chemical that heals everything. You could almost have your arm severed, and they could just stitch you together, throw you in a Bacta tank, and you're good to go. Full use of the limb. But he's allergic to Bacta, so anytime he gets a serious injury, they just have to replace that whole part of his body with a prosthetic, a droid part or whatever. So he's basically just a cyborg walking around who also thinks he's God's gift to women, which is just hilarious. So yeah, great characters. There's also a deception in the story. I won't spoil it for you, but there's something that the Wraith Squadron is trying to pull over on Warlord Jinja. And it was really well written, but I'm always kind of like, waiting for the leather shoe to drop, at that point, because those kind of stories are usually written, you get to the end, and then suddenly the villain's like, well, I knew you weren't, the real such and such. I knew you were trying to play me all along, which is why I played you. And, then it's just like a little stroke of luck that the hero wins in the end. I hate that. I hate it when you use a whole part of a book just as a setup to get you to the end, the gotcha at the end, And that's not what this did. I can, thankfully say Wraith Squadron did not do that. Every part of the book matters. It's fun. Enjoy it. So I'm in the second one now. I'm almost halfway through the second one. I'm enjoying that too, but I'll give a proper review of that afterwards. But just wanted to give you these supplemental thoughts. Again, not perfect. I had an issue here or there with it, but overall it was quite good, I thought anyway.